probably the reason why you want to learn to code is so that you can land an awesome new job as a software engineer. You can have a new career. Probably this new career will pay more. There'll be more room for growth. You'll be challenged, and you'll probably work at an awesome tech company that offers you the amazing benefits that most software engineers get, which is working remotely or having flexible hours, etc. The problem is this also seems incredibly daunting. The actual process of you looking for a job can be very intimidating, because if your background is whatever yours is, it might seem impossible for you to then go into being a software engineer, especially now. You're probably thinking to yourself, who's actually going to want to look at my resume and who's going to want to interview me? Well, in this webinar, I'm going to give you a step-by-step plan which will actually get you results, whether you're ready to start looking for a job now or you first have to tackle the mountain of learning to code and learning software engineering skills. This will give you a vision for what it looks like to actually search for your first software engineering job. And just as a little hint, it is not submitting 1,000 applications. In fact, the advice that I'm going to give you in this webinar is the advice I've given to all of our graduates, which has contributed to Project Shift for the most of its life, having a 100% placement rate for our graduates. You'll see that this advice is going to bid you to do some uncomfortable things, but those uncomfortable things that you're going to do are the things that most people are not doing. It's going to set you apart, and if you follow the advice, you'll land a job as a software engineer very quickly. Okay, so first of all, land your first coding job. Where do I expect you are at this point? Well, I'm not sure, right? And it's okay. If you're planning to start your job search for your first software engineering, web development, whatever you want to call it, position, your first coding position, down the road at some point, whether that be next week, next month, next year, whatever it is, I think this topic is extremely relevant to you. If you're like most beginners, then the thing that you're most anxious about in this process of learning is the job search, because you're asking yourself questions such as, are there enough positions? One thing I hear a lot is, hey, is the market saturated for junior developers? So there's so many coding boot camps in the world now. It seems like everyone's learning to code and getting these awesome jobs. Is the market saturated? And essentially, I hope what you're going to find out in here, the things that we're going to talk about, will make none of those questions even relevant anymore, right? Because maybe it's true. Maybe the market is saturated, which I don't actually think it is, by the way. But regardless, you should be able to stand out as a brand new developer. And we're going to talk about exactly how to do that. Let me let one more person in. All right. So I'll have to say, whether you have never written a line of code before and you think eventually you'll do the job search, or you are thirsty for this information right now, I think this will be relevant for everyone involved. All right. So before we even get started with kind of the path and the outline that I'm going to take us through for really a step-by-step practical guide of what I would do. And in fact, what I have done. At the end here, I'm going to tell you a story about myself. A few years ago when I was doing a job search, I applied for one position at one company. It was my dream job, so to speak, and I got an offer. I didn't end up taking the offer. I ended up starting Project Shift instead. But I want to share with you exactly what I did, and this is really the plan here is what I'm outlining is exactly what I did. But before we get to that, why what you are doing or were planning to do will not actually work. Now, why I say this is because I've posted this on LinkedIn before quite a bit, and I've been writing an article on this topic, and I've been teaching this topic, by the way, for several years now. You know, I have a code school, Project Shift. We've had that for several years. We're relaunching in a new kind of online, more affordable version of that. But I've taught dozens of people these concepts, and it's helped them land jobs very quickly. But what I see a lot of on LinkedIn, especially, are these posts from, quote, coding bootcamp grads who are saying, you know, I applied for 500 jobs, I got 30 interviews and 6 offers, and man, that was a lot of work. And I think probably that story is even overblown in itself, that I actually don't think you'd even have that much success. If you cold applied for 200 jobs, if I was a betting man, no offense, but I would bet against you that you would get 200 rejections. And the reason for that is not because you're not smart. In fact, I think the opposite. You probably are worth hiring. these folks who are hiring positions just don't know you yet, right? You're the best thing they've never heard of, perhaps. But whenever you have no previous experience, when you have no kind of degree, which by the way, computer science degrees aren't that valuable in and of itself for a software engineering position, as I hope you've come to find out or you'll learn more about in the future. When you look at your resume, it doesn't show that you have any experience. So most of these applicant tracking software will just straight up reject you. And all that's going to do is make you depressed, right? You're going to look at the rejection email and you're going to be sad that you're not moving forward. And that's going to cause you to watch about 10 YouTube videos instead of actually applying for more jobs. So you're not probably actually going to get around to applying for 200 jobs. So that is not going to work. You're going to get rejected, but instead there needs to be a way in which you can help yourself stand apart in other ways. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. So as I was saying, your current strategy probably won't get you to be where you need to be, right? And it's these 4 reasons that I want to outline here. Most people just submit cold applications. In fact, I read a statistic earlier today, and I forget the exact number, but for a large company, they'll get thousands of applicants per position, and only probably 10% of those applicants will actually be viewed by an actual human. So is your resume so beefed up that it's going to get automatically picked up? Probably not. It's not impressive on its own on a piece of paper. That doesn't mean you're not impressive. You're just not impressive on a piece of paper. Your certificate. So if you graduated from a coding boot camp, for example, which I assume most of you are aspiring toward something like that or some kind of self-paced route, there's no value in that in of itself. Even in a associate's degree from Wake Tech, Durham Tech, some kind of community college on computer science or software engineering, there's no real value in that because software engineering is one of these rare fields in which you can actually prove whether or not you can do the job, right? You don't need a certificate to tell you that you can, but at the same time, a certificate doesn't tell you that you can. So therefore, it alone has no value. So you need to stand out. So here are the 5 steps that I'm going to ask you to think through and to actually take some practical steps, either now or in the future, whenever that time is that you're going to be job searching. And we're going to go over each of them one by one. So first of all, getting your mindset right. I mean, that might sound obvious enough, but I think what I'm going to explain here is going to be something that's totally new to you. And in a way, this is where the battle is won, right? I mean, of course you have confidence issues right now. Of course you have imposter syndrome right now. You, more than anyone else, as the beginner who's never been a software engineer, as a career changer, your background probably has nothing to do with coding. So of course you're struggling. So let's talk about how we can get that right. And that's going to be the thing that's really key here. 2, identify your dream job. We're going to go over this more, of course, in a moment. But what I'm saying here is don't think of this as a numbers game. Don't apply for 200 jobs. That one is desperate, right? Are you desperate for a job? You might be, but you're not going to be very passionate in the interview and application process for these 200 lame jobs that you really don't want. You will be passionate about your dream job. So let's identify your dream job. Let's go after that job. Is that exciting? If I say, actually, you can work in the industry that you want to work in, you can work for the company that has the benefits that you're excited about, you can work for the company that is on mission with the same mission that you have for your life, that's exciting. And that's going to come through in an interview. So we're going to talk about what that looks like. Number 3, find a connection, right? This is where everything is won. You get to make a connection with a real person, build a relationship, and that's the person that's going to refer you to the job, not some kind of applicant tracking software. Number 4, we're going to get you to get a meeting, right? Some kind of meeting with this individual, a decision maker, a VP of engineering, an engineering manager, whoever it is that's making decisions on hiring engineers. Let's get you in a one-on-one, face-to-face, if possible, meeting and build a relationship. And then 5, we're going to help you build a system where you are a follow-up maniac, right? Where you take every relationship that you're building in this job search process and you own all the responsibility of it. You never miss a beat when it comes to following up with someone. If you told someone, I'm going to follow up with you in 2 days, bam, you're right there following up. in 2 days. And I promise you, if you can do this process for one person, you can do it for 3 people, you can do it for one company, you can do it for 3 companies. And that compounding effect is going to build up so large that not only will you find a job quickly, but whenever you come to find your next job, where you're searching again for whatever the next gig is, if you're looking to get a raise or move up, or you find another company that you'd rather work at, so let's say you're shooting for, Google or Netflix or Facebook or something like that, you'll have an entire arsenal of contacts that can help you get you that interview or make a connection to the person that can get you that interview. All right. Work remotely using Lisp or Python in Vietnam or China. Nice. Yeah, I've got remote aspirations too. I mean, I love Raleigh-Durham, but my wife and I have talked about moving to Spain. We lived in Israel for a season and we just loved living abroad. So I'm right there with you. All right. Step 1. Excuse me. This is about getting your mindset right. All right. So I'm going to talk through what I mean by that. Let's say that, you just graduated from a coding boot camp, something to that effect. Maybe you're unemployed, whatever, you're job searching, right? And so what you've got to do is get your laptop out, figure out what your next step is, submit applications, whatever it is you think that you need to do. Maybe it's you call a friend who works at IBM. You're like, oh man, Cindy, she's my friend. She works there. She could probably get me an in. Maybe Cindy gives you some more context. Anyways, there is work to do. And so instead of actually making these phone calls, you just make a large list of people that you need to call. Then you realize your resume is out of date. So you start working on your resume, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Before you know it, it's like 12 o'clock. You've watched 10 YouTube videos because you're getting sidetracked and these things are too hard. That's motion, right? You haven't actually done anything that moves the needle. You haven't done any action. And I love this. This comes from James Clear. He writes Atomic Habits. I'm a huge nerd for some of these productivity guys like James Clear or Michael Hyatt and others in that space. But motion makes it feel like you're accomplishing work, whereas action is the stuff that actually moves the needle. Now, action is also the stuff that is difficult to do, right? It takes a lot of self-confidence to take some of this action. So in my example before, you don't need any confidence to build a list of contacts. You need self-confidence to call that list of contacts, right? To actually get on the phone, talk about yourself, who you are as a software engineer, what your background is, how you can add value to your company. That takes a ton. And the problem is you don't actually believe that you have what it takes. At the root of all this is our own belief that we do not actually believe that we have what it takes when it comes time to showing up at the job, to stepping into that role as an engineer. You don't think you can do it. And so that comes all the way back to this job search point where you won't actually do the uncomfortable stuff. And the truth is the uncomfortable stuff is the good stuff. That's the stuff that's actually going to set you apart. And I promise you, 99% of the other applicants are not going to do the uncomfortable stuff because it's uncomfortable, but it's going to be the stuff that's going to really change things for you. So how do we change our beliefs about ourselves? Now, not to get too philosophical here, and I'm actually going to be quite a bit, quite practical in some of this. So one is to nail your one-liner. Now that seems maybe counterintuitive to your own self-confidence. Maybe you should keep a journal about writing down all the things that you think are great about yourself to give yourself more self-confidence. But actually, if you come to that point in which you're actually talking to somebody, if you know what you want to say, that's going to give you a ton of confidence to actually create the action that's going to make these meetings and phone calls. Anyway, so now your one-liner. Now I'm not going to go into this in too much depth, but your one-liner, you could say the same thing as your elevator pitch, your objective on your resume, your summary on LinkedIn, your bio on Instagram. I mean, these are all kind of the same thing. This kills me. This space kills me. All right. Sorry. How to fix that. And here are the 3 parts to your one-liner. You want to be able to state the problem. Now, the problem of who's having the problem? not you, right? You're the solution, actually. The problem is the hiring manager. It's their problem. They're the ones who have the problem. Now, probably the hiring manager's problem is more or less the same for every company, right? And it might look different depending on the company, how big it is, what industry it's in, etc. But the problem lies somewhere in this fact that they're having a hard time finding talent, which, by the way, this is a really, really good thing for you, right? This is why this whole coding bootcamp thing works so well, is because there's not enough talent. There's a ton of demand and there's very little supply. And this is true even in COVID. In fact, of all of our graduates that have ever graduated from our program, we had never until about 3 weeks ago had anyone get laid off. One guy got laid off. 2 weeks later, he had a new job at a different company that was even better than what he had before. So all that to say, you want to kind of press in on that. And in your one-liner, you want to be able to put that language. Start with the problem, restate it. Now, you might not use this in every context, but this is great for a cocktail party. Geez, if we ever have cocktail parties. Again, you're walking around and someone says, hey, Cindy, or whatever your name is, what is it that you do? Now, maybe you're job searching. This is the perfect time. You don't want to say, man, I'm unemployed, really trying to get into this coding thing. I can't find a job. You say something like, it's hard for a lot of companies to find great junior developers. So that's what you start off with, is rephrasing the problem. Now, maybe this individual you're talking to at the cocktail party, for example, may not be a hiring manager at a company, but they might have a friend, right, who is. And this happens to me all the time, to be honest. I have friends who are looking for new employees at their companies. Or there's a guy that I know from church, for example, and he always reaches out to me for his company. He's a senior engineer. He's not technically hiring anyone, but he gets a big fat referral bonus if someone gets hired. So anyways, that's a side note. So state the problem, then the solution. Now, who's the solution? Like I said, you're the solution, but you need to be able to articulate exactly how you're the solution. Now, you being the solution isn't just, oh, I'm great at coding, I'm a good engineer, I'm a great people person, none of those kinds of generic things. You want to be able to connect the back life you have, like the previous life, whatever your job was before, especially if you're a career changer, what your personality is. Connect those things. Don't be scared of those. Don't be scared of the fact that you didn't get a computer science degree or that you are bad at math and science. Maybe I wouldn't say that. I'm personally terrible at math and I got D's in physics. But I'm a great developer because there's a part of me that is good at solving problems and creating software. So you need to be able to connect whatever your past is with who you are now as a software engineer and use it as an advantage. I had a guy who, I'm spending way too much time on this, but I had a guy who he's one of the lead. He has 350 engineers underneath him at Cisco. He has been a mentor for Project Shift for a long time. And he told me that he used to go to Carnegie Mellon, one of the top computer science schools in the country, to recruit engineers. And he stopped doing that because there was no depth to folks who didn't have a previous background. So he exclusively looks for career changers now because they're the ones who have the secret sauce. So solution might look like this: as someone with a demonstrated history of being a self-starter, due to my past life as an entrepreneur. Maybe you started a failed business, but you have a past life as an entrepreneur. Now, that is the reasoning, and that's connection to your background. And then what's the result, right? Help the people that you are wanting to hire you realize this new beginning, this new future that they could have with you. So the result here is I'm able to learn on my own, but to also know when to ask for help from the rest of the team. Now, this gets at their problem exactly, right? It can be tough to find junior developers worth investing in who are able to contribute from day one. So there's this problem with new developers because they don't have anything to add in the beginning, yet now you're the solution. So anyways, all I have to say, that's one thing you can do to help your beliefs, is to have this one-liner ready. Now, you may not use it immediately, but it's going to be helpful for you to have that in your back pocket, to know who you are the problems that you're solving for whatever company it is that you are applying for. Now, the second thing I'm going to offer you here in this area is work on your habits. So remember, I'm talking about getting your mindset right, changing your beliefs, the beliefs about who you are. And this comes from, again, the book that I love, Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he talks about this idea that every time you perform a habit, right? Maybe it's you go to the gym, you are casting a vote for a new identity. So let's take the example of someone who is trying to get fit, right? January rolls around, it's the new year. The reason why you don't go to the gym is probably because you don't think of yourself as the kind of person who goes to the gym, right? But how do you become the type of person who goes to the gym? Well, you go to the gym. And he tells a story about a guy who would literally drive to the gym parking lot. He had a thing where he was going to get out, go inside for 5 minutes, and then go back and go home. And he did that for the longest time. He ended up being someone who didn't exercise, but he just went to the gym. And eventually, I think that sounds ridiculous, but eventually he started working out, et cetera, et cetera. He had this new identity. So for you to think of yourself as a software engineer, someone who can code, especially during this job search process, you can't stop coding, because every time you work on a side project, every time you write a piece of code, you push a commit, you are casting a vote for software engineer. That is who you are, and that is your identity. And there's 1,000 things that you can cast votes for in a good direction when it comes to job searching, right? Maybe it's someone who's a good networker. Maybe you make a habit of reaching out to people every week regardless, or you make a habit of going to meetups, whether they be online or, God willing, in person at some point. Work on your habits, and that will change your mindset. All right, so that's number one. The rest of these, I hope will go a little bit faster. So the 5 steps. Step 2, identify your dream job. This is where things start getting fun. You can start thinking about where it is that you really want to work and what it is you want to do. All right, identify your dream job. Why? All right, why start here? And I'm going to tell you again, wait till the end. I'm going to tell you a story about how I did exactly this. I was living in Israel. I had never lived in Raleigh, Durham a day in my life. And we were moving here, and I immediately found the company I wanted to work for, didn't apply anywhere else, and got an offer there. All right, so why should you start here? Well, one, you have what it takes to not settle. Now, that is, again, going back to point number 1, getting your mindset right. That might be hard for it to sink in for you, but you have what it takes, right? You don't have to settle for a lame job that's going to pay you below what you're worth to do work that you're not passionate about at a company that you don't care about. Now, there's caveats, obviously, right? Employment is better than unemployment. Experience trumps salary. All those things are true, but you have what it takes to not settle. I mean, you definitely have to be a little bit realistic. I'm not sure that if you settle for nothing but Google, then you'll land Google. That's just a different beast, Google, Facebook, some of those big companies. I think 2 years down from the road, you can absolutely land a job at Google. No doubt, 2 years from now, get some work experience in, land a job at Google. But in the meantime, what's the step before that? What's the dream job, going from whatever your life was before to what's the ideal scenario for you as a software engineer? 2, if you don't look for your dream job, you won't be motivated, right? You're not going to be very excited about walking into, I don't want to name any companies because that might be your dream job. I would never want to work for a healthcare company. I got nothing against healthcare. Obviously, I love healthcare. It's an important part of everyone's life, but it's just not an industry I'm passionate about. But there's someone in our current class who they're super passionate about healthcare. They have a background as a nurse. That's exactly where they want to be. 3, your passion won't be genuine. That's obvious, right? If you're not motivated, your passion won't be genuine. On the reverse, if you are passionate about the company, that's going to come through and it's going to make the whole process much easier. You're much more likely to land a job like that. And then 4, the job marketing. The job. There we go. Thanks, guys. I can just see that. Edit. The job market isn't scarce, but it's abundant. Now, I already kind of went over this previously, but you have to believe that you don't have to just scrape up whatever there is, but you can actually look for something that you're super excited about. All right, so your next action. So what would I tell you to do at this point? Make a large list of companies you want to work, but order at least a top 5. Be ambitious, like I said, but realistic. So make a big list of companies. We are going to get super practical from here on out on exactly what you should do. If I was telling you, if you're actually in the job search right now, I would tell you make this a list on beside your computer here of what to do after tonight. First thing, make a large list of companies. Search around the internet, Google, go on LinkedIn, figure out what those companies are, figure out what the things are that you want, right? Is it pay? Is it experience? Is it the ability to work remote? Well, you got that, probably regardless of where you work, which is really nice. Is it benefits? Is it mission? You figure out what it is that's important to you, and then you start narrowing down a list of companies as a result. But we're going to do the following with just one company. All right. So next is we're going to find a connection. So let's kind of imagine ourselves that we are thinking through companies. We've identified one. So get that company in your head, whatever that is for you. For me, the story I'm going to tell in a little bit was this company called Pendo. And Pendo's actually blown up. They're a company that's based in downtown Raleigh. They have offices kind of all over the place now. But they were a really cool tech company. They create a product for product owners, product managers, which is really exciting. So let's think about that company. Now we're going to try and find a connection. I say at all costs because there are a lot of creative, uncomfortable things that you can do to actually make one of those connections. All right. So who are we looking for? All right, let's take our company that we had in our mind. For me, it was Pendo. And we're thinking about, we want to connect with a decision maker. All right, so a decision maker, someone who's actually making the decisions on the hiring process for software engineers at said company. Now, normally in the field of web development, software engineering, whatever you want to call it, we're thinking about a CTO, chief technical officer, a VP of engineering, an engineering manager, et cetera. I remember in Israel, they called them research and development. Research and development was lingo for software engineering for whatever reason in Israel. So these are the people you're looking for. And there's a variety of ways that we can find them. Now, obviously a personal connection, right? Do some network mapping. I don't know if you've ever done this before, where you think about the different fields of influence in your life, whether it be past jobs you had, college, even high school, friends of your parents, friends of relatives, people from church, sports, whatever it is that you do extracurricular, you could probably get at someone that's pretty close to someone at this company, right? A friend of a friend of a friend, some degrees of separation. LinkedIn is obviously going to be one of the best tools for this. And we're going to look at that in just a moment of how we could actually go on LinkedIn and find this CTO or VP of engineering. And hey, maybe we should just reach out to all of them. And then the website, right? So we'll look at this here in a moment as well, but you can literally just go on the company's website, and sometimes they'll list the leadership team and who's in charge, and you can just find a name there. And then from there, we can go through the process of actually finding contact information, of being, not stalkers, because that's not what this is, but being people who are proactive. All right, so here's my example. Again, given Pendo. So this is the footer of Pendo's website. Right now, I'm pretty sure it's like that right now if you go to pendo.io, which, by the way, for me, I worked in Austin, Texas as a software engineer for a little bit before we moved to Tel Aviv, Israel, where I worked helping start this code school in Israel. And so I wasn't actually a software engineer for a few years. And I was concerned that maybe my experience wasn't relative and maybe I couldn't find a job anymore or whatever. And so I started looking for companies in Raleigh that were similar to the type of companies that I worked for in Austin. And so I was looking for a really incredible culture, great benefits, startup environment, that kind of thing. So that's why Pendo ended up being the thing for me. The industry didn't really matter so much to me as the culture and community. So go to the footer of their website. There's an about link. I click about and it will show me their leadership team. Perfect. Oh man, it saved my little Pinterest thing there. Okay, so this is Pendo's leadership team. Now, obviously, I don't know any of these people, and you wouldn't either if you were doing this Google search. But right off the bat, we get this name, Eric Trone, and it says founder, CTO. So immediately, I'm like, all right, this is the person, because everyone else is non-technical. CMO, CPO, that's probably a chief product officer. He might be a little technical. CFO, that's financial. So this is the person that I want to talk to. All right, so I've got that kind of name set aside as someone that might be worth trying to connect with. Now, if I do some more research on LinkedIn, you can actually see the size of the company, because most people, most employees for a company will be on LinkedIn. You can see how many employees there actually are. If, in this case, if I were to find out that Pendo has like 500 people, the CTO may not be the best bet. It might be engineering manager or VP of engineering. So nonetheless, I then went on LinkedIn. Here you go. So this is kind of the top banner for if I were to search Pendo on LinkedIn. It gets their cool little banner. And it says, see all 453 employees on LinkedIn. Okay, so it's a big company, but I can literally see all the employees that work there, and I can see a profile that pops up for all of them. When I click that, I get a variety of people. Now, this might be kind of creepy because I'm looking at real people's names, but you can go do the same search as well. And I see a few different folks now, senior backend engineer. I don't know if you can see this very well on your computer or not, but there's different titles. A lot of them are engineers, which is awesome. But one thing I can do is I can actually type in my search on LinkedIn. I could say Pendo engineering manager, right? And now it gives me just 10 results. And I've got engineering manager at Pendo, engineering manager, VP engineering at Pendo. We're hiring. Hey, thanks, Andrew. Director of engineering at Pendo, engineering manager at Pendo. So these are 5 people that would be great to start working on, right? To try and make a connection. And now, again, we're going to get to what that looks like, but essentially, I want to tell them who I am, right? I'm the best thing they never heard of. I want to tell them how passionate I am about their company, how their culture just intrigues me. I've worked at companies like this before. I'm so excited to be here and engaging, etc. So that's what we're going to do eventually. All right. So let's say that I just started at the top. All right. We're going to go with Brian Howell. Brian, which I never met Brian, by the way. So sorry, Brian. But Brian Howell's my man. I'm going to try and, because he's just the top of the list, I'm going to try and start with him first. Then I'll talk with Jennifer, then Andrew, then Michael, and James. All right. So how do I actually find Brian's information? Now, luckily for me, in this case, he's a second connection. Now, if you are active on LinkedIn, which I suggest you should be, then oftentimes your connection will be a second or third connection, which means that you may not know them directly, but you probably know somebody who does know them. So therefore, I click that and I can see that I've got 10 mutual connections. And these are folks that I can reach out to and say, hey, for example, hey, David, which I know David Rogers personally. Some of these people are just connections I have on LinkedIn, by the way. Like Ryan Daigle, I don't know that I've ever met him in person, but David Rogers, I know him pretty well. I can say, hey, David, I'm looking at this job at Pendo. I saw Brian Howell, yada, yada, yada. Would you please connect me? Now, I'm going to show you an example of how I actually did that in the real world in just a little bit, but that's what my next move would be. All right. So now that we've made the connection, right? We at least found the connection. We know who it is we're looking for. Again, this is just one connection at one company. I could go through 5 connections at the same company. I could do this for several companies. The next step is ask for a meeting. Brian, I'm coming for you. Man, let's just like grab some coffee. Let's talk coding. Can we? Something like that. All right. Ask for a meeting, not a job. What I mean by that is off the bat, we're not going for the jugular, right? This is not the kill shot. We're not trying to say, Brian, hire me now. Because Brian's like, no, thank you. I don't know you. We're going to build a relationship here, and let's talk about how we do that. All right, genuine relationship. Now, this doesn't have to be like, man, me and Brian are like going to the movies and stuff. Our kids are playing together or anything like that. This just means that, I want something out of Brian, regardless if he does what I want or not, right? I'm genuinely interested in his company. This is why like finding your dream job is much better than just starting with any job. Because if I didn't really want the job, if I just wanted the paycheck and I reached out to Brian, I was like, hey man, yeah, I'm really interested in, what was the name of your company again? Yeah, that company. In this case, I'm genuinely interested in what Pendo does. I mean, what an exciting story. They became $1 billion company last year, et cetera. So face-to-face is best for this meeting, right? Obviously COVID abounds. So perhaps a Zoom call is the next best thing where I can look at you face-to-face, even though we're not actually in person. It's super convenient. They don't only have to leave their office or their home, bedroom, whatever. After that, a phone call is better than nothing. Beyond that, it's just, you're not going to build any kind of real rapport, which, by the way, as a side note, have you ever noticed, I'm trying to think of a good analogy for this or example, but do you know those people who probably in your life who are super important folks, right? I mean, they're just important because, I don't know, they have a great job, they're high up, they're a community leader, and you know them from some random thing, right? Maybe your kids go to school together, or you went to school with them, or you go to church together, right? There's this different aspect of that relation. No matter how well you know them, that relationship is just pure genuine, right? You were never asking for anything from them. Even if you just run into somebody and you meet them at a coffee shop, right? Let's say I meet Brian, this VP of engineering, engineering manager, whatever, at a coffee shop. That relationship is so much more genuine than this, right? And so a personal connection is still going to be the best bet. But this is the next best thing to actually building that relationship. All right, so that's what we want. Now, we're going to talk about writing the email. Okay, so just kind of retrace our steps. This is real, hopefully simple, step-by-step formula, I guess, that we're building out here. Is you've got your mindset right. You've found, or at least identified, your dream job. You found a connection at this company. You know who you want to reach out to. Now it's time to reach out. Now, probably through LinkedIn, the internet, other means, you can at least find their email address somehow. And so that's what we're going to do next. We're going to write them an email. Because what better way to reach out? Okay, so here is a pretty good email, but I want to tell you why it stinks and it's the worst thing you could do. All right, hi Brian. I've been following that what Pendo has built to help companies build better products, and I'm intrigued with how you write JavaScript that lives in so many different environments. Okay, by the way, I did some research, right? I know about Pendo. You should do the same when writing this email. That part of the email is good. As someone who is launching their software career, guys, if you know me, you know that I'm terrible at spell checking myself. I'd love to meet up for a few minutes and learn more about the engineering team at Pendo. All the best, Aaron. All right. So you might think, hey, that's a pretty good email. But let's get into the mind of Brian real quick, right? Brian logs in Monday morning. He's refreshed. Did something. He went to the mountains this weekend, drinks a cup of coffee, see this email from this guy. Oh man, that sounds super nice. Aaron sounds like a great guy. Oh, this is so cool. What is he supposed to respond with? I mean, it would be perfectly valid if he just responded with, sounds good. So what we want, though, is we want for Brian to be able to respond to our email with one sentence, and that sentence immediately books an email. So at best, if we could get Brian to respond to this email, Brian would now have to initiate the process in which we actually plan the meeting, right? Which means that yet I risk again that perhaps he won't email me back the next time because maybe he responds, sure, Aaron, sounds good. What are some times that work for you? That would be the best case, right? And that would be really nice of Brian if he did that. But it's unlikely that he would actually respond like that. So instead, we want to revise our first emails just a little bit. Instead, I want to say, I'd love to meet up for a few minutes and learn more about the engineering team at Pendo. Here are some times I'm free. And then I can put best Aaron. So all I did in this email was to write a few different times that I'm free. I'd probably also put, if we're doing this in Zoom, a Zoom link. If we're grabbing coffee, I'd find a coffee shop that's right by his office, and I'd suggest that we go there. I'm thinking about 9 a.m. It's the beginning of the day, or 12. Usually you have lunch. Brian can respond to this email and say, sure, Aaron, Tuesday at 9 a.m. is good. See you then, right? Especially if I included details on exactly that meeting. Make it as easy as possible for them to actually say yes to a meeting to you. Notice I didn't ask him, hey, Brian, I was just wondering, do you think you'd want to like maybe somehow like get together for a coffee or something? I assumed Brian wanted to meet with me. Like I portrayed this confidence in the email. And that, I promise you, is going to, I mean, at least 60%, 70% more effective, I would have to guess, than doing it the other way around and writing emails that don't have a lot of action. By the way, this, yet again, an email like this requires that you have your mindset right and that your head is on straight and they're confident. All right. Almost done with this one. And then finally, the last step. So thanks for bearing with me. I know I've been talking a lot. The meeting and beyond. All right. So Brian responded back. Yeah, Aaron, would love to jump on a Zoom call with you. Sounds good. See you then. So what do I do during this Zoom call? Well, first of all, be prepared, obviously. Have a list of questions that you want to ask. I mean, in this case, I wouldn't immediately lurch into, hey, I want a job. I mean, I also wouldn't beat around the bush, right? If that's what you want, at some point in the meeting, like bring up, hey, Brian, do you think I'd be a good candidate for Pendo? Because it's gonna be really awkward if you just leave that alone and then later on, oh yeah, Brian, I forgot. I was gonna ask you if I could work there. So weird that slipped my mind during that meeting that we were having. But so being enthusiastic, lead the conversation, right? Oh my gosh, lead the conversation. Be prepared. I mean, that requires, again, that you have some self-confidence, but you have to lead the conversation. Ask Brian good questions about himself, his path to becoming a software engineer, his experience, what he loves with the company. There's 1,000 things you can ask. And again, if you really are into this company, you really want to work there, they're going to be genuine questions that you're genuinely curious about. Make an ask, of course, bring it up at some point during the meeting. Hey, Brian, are there open positions? What do you think? But don't lead with that. And then lastly, if you end up getting coffee or lunch, right? Again, COVID aside, always pay. That might sound stupid. And you're like, hey, I'm broke and I'm employed. This guy's an engineering manager. At least makes 120 or something. Why am I paying? There's this weird psychological thing that happens that is kind of subconscious, that if they pay, then I helped him out, but you'd much rather him help you out in helping you grab a job, and that just shows some confidence as well that you're paying. So if you're tight on money and you are doing a face-to-face meeting, get coffee, because coffee is much cheaper than lunch. All right. Last thing, the critical follow-up. Now, what I'm about to talk about is how you pretty much become a machine. And you don't just do this for one company, one contact, but you do this for a lot. And you build up this momentum to where it is just, you're going to find a job super fast in a matter of weeks rather than months. I promise you, every time I've seen graduates of our program who actually do this, which honestly, I'd say probably a third of the time they do this. Even them, they rarely do this way the entire time. Someone might kind of jump in and do some of this because it's scary, but if those who do it, man, it's so quick. All right. First, create a quote contact tracking system. So just some kind of method where you can organize all the people that you're in touch with and exactly where the relationship is at. So if you want to just use a spreadsheet and kind of roll your own, if you want to use a CMS like Salesforce or HubSpot is free for a little bit, it might feel overkill, but whatever you're comfortable with, do that. As long as you have, excuse me, their name, company, job title, email address, date of first contact, and notes. Those are the fields that you need. By the way, I'll send this out, this little presentation, if you actually want to keep track of these different things. So at least want to have those fields for each contact. Second, document the initial contact, right? Of course, so I'm reaching out to Brian. I want to write down when I reached out to him so that 2 days later, if I look at this system and I say, oh, I reached out to Brian 2 days ago and I haven't heard back from him, I know now that I need to reach out. And I'll tell you what I mean by that here in a moment. Third, create your daily workflow, right? I mean, you're not just sitting around watching YouTube videos while you're job searching. You've got a daily workflow. So a daily workflow, for me, I'd say create like 30 minutes a day, something that you do every day that's sort of like a ritual for your job search. So maybe it's a list of checkboxes that says, one, look at my contact tracking system and see if there's anyone I should follow up with. 2, search through these different job sites to see if there's new jobs that popped up. Whatever that list of things that you do are, you can probably condense it all into 30 minutes where you just knock it out and then do some coding, that kind of thing. The second bullet point here, where I've got the bold. This is crazy important. Crazy important. And I guarantee you, almost no one is following a rule like this. You're going to think I'm crazy probably too. So let's say I reach out to Brian. If it's been 2 business days and I have not received a reply from him, then it's time for me to send a follow-up email and make note of the date in the notes section of your contact tracking system. You'll repeat this process indefinitely until you get a response. That means that I am emailing Brian every 2 days until Brian emails me back. And I'm doing it with a smile on my face, right? Now, this might sound counterintuitive because you have all these voices in your head that are telling you lies. They're saying, well, Brian's not emailing you back because he's not interested in hearing from you. Or Brian read your email, he thinks you're an idiot. Whatever it is, you just don't know that it's true. And so why don't you let them tell you that, right? If Brian responds and says, sorry, Aaron, I'm slammed, just not going to be something I'm ever able to do, then you can say, cool, thanks. Brian's dead to me, in a sense, in the contact tracking sense of the word dead to you. So you can be done with him. But allow him to do that. If at that point, by the way, if you keep hammering him, then that's called stalking. I think that's some kind of harassment. But if sometimes they just get busy, right? Or if it's me, to be honest with you, sometimes if someone's been emailing me repeatedly, then I'm like, oh, okay, they're serious. I should probably, or if sometimes I accidentally delete the email and I think to myself, oh, I thought I saw an email in there. I can't find it. Oh, well, if they really want to talk to me, they will email me again. Here's an example of this real quick. This was actually with someone who is incredibly important for my business, for Project Shift. I won't tell you who it is because I think if I told you what it was, you would know exactly how to find whoever this is. But this is integral to our business working well and our students having success. And he emailed me, and I tried following up with this individual. And this is actually, I didn't follow up with them as much as I would suggest that you do. But finally, in the end, he said, yikes, 1,000 apologies. Your persistence worked. And every time in my email, I wasn't saying, dang it, would you just email me back? Who do you think I am? You don't think my time is important? Every email I sent giving him the benefit of the doubt. Hey, just being persistent here. You probably missed my email. Hey, just putting this at the top of your inbox. Whatever way you want to word it, to be kind, just have a smile on your face, but keep hammering them. You don't know that they don't want to talk to you and until they tell you they don't want to talk to you. So you don't need to be discouraged by people who don't read your email. Perhaps you just need to keep on following up. That has reaped so many benefits for me in my life. It's increasing how important persistence is. Yep, persistence with benefit of the doubt. I like that. All right, the follow-up. Always take responsibility for the relationship, right? If you said you're following up in 2 days, you better follow up in 2 days. If there is something that needs to be done, maybe you're talking to somebody and they said, hey, my company doesn't have any openings right now, but I know such and such at such and such company. They're really excited. Let me give you their contact information. Then what you should say is, awesome, I will send you a reminder email that you connect me, right? Because if they forget, then that's on them, but you don't want it to be on them. You want to take the responsibility off of them. So always take responsibility. And then finally, there is, like I said, a compounding effect of this kind of persistence. If you do this with many people at many companies, your confidence will grow as people say yes. Every time someone says no or someone doesn't email you back, it's a little bit of a shot in the heart. I'm not going to lie. But every time someone says yes, I mean, it's just like sales, to be honest. I hate to say that, but it really is. Every time you get a yes, it's a win, and it's going to fuel the flame in your heart to go after this and just do it more. Your calendar will fill up and your contact base will grow and increase, like I said before, future chances of growth, right? So, I mean, this happened to me, by the way. It was actually my first job. I graduated from a boot camp. I mean, early 2012. That was like the first year they even had this concept of a code school in the world. I went through one, and there was my dream company, right? And they were interviewing me, and ended up that things kind of just fizzled out. And so I took a contract at this other company for 3 months, but I kept in good touch with the original company just in case, right? And my contract ended with that other company, and it turns out that I hated the other company. It was really bad. I mean, it was just a bad situation. So I reached out to the engineering manager at my dream company, and since we had a relationship, right, it ended up I didn't even need him because I already got a job that paid a lot of money. But since I had reached out to him, we had a relationship, and I reached out to him again, and he said, yeah, actually we've got something. How about you come check it out? And I ended up getting a job there. So you never know what the fruits of your labor will yield in the future for, other companies that you might want to work at too. All right. I know I'm talking a lot. I'm gonna take a drink of water, and then we're going to talk about me. That sounds so arrogant, but it's just a case study. So I could go through others too, but this really is exactly what I did. Okay. So I'm just going to set up the real life scenario here. The year is 2017. So obviously it was like a different entire world that was happening back in 2017. But it was 2017. My family had previously lived in Texas most of my life, lived in Israel just now for a couple of years. And then I was moving to Raleigh, Durham. I hadn't had a job as a software engineer in a while, didn't know how relevant I was anymore. And all I knew was I've got 2 kids and no job. So let's solve this problem. And the first thing I did was, I want to work at a really cool company. So I found Pendo, like I said before, it is a real scenario. And I started looking around LinkedIn to see who I knew who knew someone at Pendo. And it turns out there was this guy named Taylor from way back in the day. And he had a connection with this guy named Shannon, who was the chief product officer at the time at Pendo. And Taylor, who I barely knew, Taylor Smith, I reached out to him on LinkedIn. I was like, hey, this was my email to him. Could you please help me connect with Shannon? I'm looking for a job there. Thankfully, Taylor followed up, and he did. He made the connection. And at the same time, I found Maddie, who was, and I think still is, by the way, a recruiter at Pendo. So this was even before we moved. This is 2016. Jeez, it's a long time ago. And I reached out to Maddie. I noticed on LinkedIn that she lived in Israel and she'd studied there for a time, which was really bizarre. And so I just made note of that. She ended up emailing me right back. So I'm kind of trying to put multiple irons in the fire at the same place. Taylor here made the connection to Shannon. That's that guy here. Shannon said, yeah, good to meet you. Let's grab a drink or something. So did my thing. I emailed Shannon. I gave him lists of times that we could meet. Of course, I made it flexible according to his time zone. and I didn't hear anything back. So I followed up with him again. And thankfully, Shannon said, "Oh, sorry about that. Totally slipped through the cracks." I mean, the first one right out the bat, this happened to me, right? So it's going to happen to you. They're not going to email you back, and you're going to have to email them. If I were to think in that moment, which I kind of did think that, but if I were to say, man, I bet Shannon thinks I'm an idiot. Why would he want to talk to me about random stuff, right? Some random guy that's living in Israel. Why do you want to talk to me about Pindo? Why does he care? But he did care, thankfully, because most people in the world are super kind and they want to help you out. I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people are. Then I reached out to Shannon again whenever we were actually moving. Shannon's like, cool. I let our CTO know because he's like, this is more relevant for the CTO than it is me. So that guy, Eric Trone, that's actually who he's talking about, which is really awesome. In the future, I followed up again with Shannon saying, hey, still looking at this. What can you do about it? Shannon was on my side. Eventually got an email from the CTO of the company saying, let's get something scheduled. And from there, it was just rolling. It was just the interview process. I came in for 1,000 interviews and ended up getting an offer. And that was the story of how I did this with just one company. And really it was one contact in the beginning, although I was kind of trying to bark up any tree that would allow me to make a connection to move forward. Now, before I open for questions, if you've got any, I want to caveat this by saying that, I want to note that there is a good amount of privilege that's involved here, right? I realize that I'm a white guy a young white guy in a young white industry. So I think some of these things are different for me, obviously, because I think someone like Shannon, who was just totally open to, let's talk. But I'm not saying that everyone would have had that same experience. But I think regardless, it's important that you get the mindset piece right, that you have confidence, that you reach out, that you make yourself stand apart. Do the networking work. It's difficult work, but it will pay off way more than if you were to spend all of your time just cold applying to jobs. All right. So that's the game plan. Again, kind of just to reiterate the steps. Get your mindset right? Every time you code, you're casting a vote for you are a software engineer. Identify that dream job of yours. Go after a place that you actually want to work. Find a connection, personal connection in your networks, on LinkedIn, through the website, whatever it is. Find a connection. Try and get a meeting, build a relationship up there. And then 5, become a follow-up machine where there is just nothing that's going to slip through the cracks when it comes to you finding a job. And I promise you, very quickly, you'll find yourself in a great position at a company you want to work at. Now, if something changes, I'll let you know. But as of right now, as of October 6th of 2020, the worst year ever, this is true, right? There are way more jobs in the world for software engineers than there are people who can fill them. You can do this, and you can do it in the next few months if you really want to do that. All right.